Yes, indeed I do. It is brunch that you're into, and we're going all the way until 12 o'clock. We are on at a fast pace today, and I'm happy for all the guests who took the time to be here. Let us go to a gentleman I've been trying to get all the time. And the reason I had a problem getting on to him is because the exact reason I'm thankful to him, he is accessible to the media, so everybody is always trying to get him. I'm fortunate that we have him this week. He is the new president of the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, Mr. Lynsley Doodhai. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, sir. How are you?
Thank you very much, Mr. Bishop. I'm fine, and it's a pleasure to be on your program this morning.
It is indeed a pleasure for us to have you here. Sir, the issue of registration forms has plagued the placement of our children for many years. This madness of parents, taxpayers as they are, standing in line sometimes as early as 4 a.m. just to get forms to stand a chance of admission for their children is, as the Minister of Education calls it, dehumanizing and disgusting. From your best understanding, what is the reason for this?
Well, first, I want to point out that this is not an occurrence in all our nation's schools. It happens in some schools, and it happens in those schools where there is a greater demand for places and there are available places in the school.
Mr. Doodhai, before we continue, is it possible you can take me off speakerphone and go to the receiver, because I'm getting an echo coming up for you, so if you go directly to the phone, it does make it a whole lot easier for us. Are you there, sir?
Sure, yeah.
That is so much better. Yes, so you say it happens only in some schools where there is high demand, not in all schools.
Yes, it happens in some schools where there's a high demand for places into the school. Now, this is by no means, I said that by no means to trivialize the matter, because to me, it's really dehumanizing to have parents standing in a line 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning to collect a registration form. Schools need to put a better system in place so that parents can come during normal school hours to collect a registration form. When I heard the minister speak of it, I am aware it happened. It reminded me of what happened at the U.S. Embassy many years ago, where people had to go and stand in line at wee hours of the morning to try to get a visa to the U.S.
And in those days, sir, what it was allegations made against some people inside the embassy for having their own preferences. In this case, which is the reason I address this to you as the parent body of these professionals, and this is not an indictment of all of them, but there is the charge that some principals and some teachers withhold forms or are reserving places for their relatives or friends. There are even allegations of forms being put out for sale. How do you respond to these assertions, sir?
Well, I have no evidence of that, and that is, I would say, wide speculation or pure speculation, because there's a clear process to be followed in terms of entry of a child into a primary school. The Ministry of Education has guidelines. To begin with, the child must be living in the catchment area of the school. The catchment area is defined as the area around the school within a diameter of 3 kilometers. So the child must be living there, and schools have systems in place where the parents have to bring in a utility bill to prove that they are really living in the catchment area. So that's one of the criteria for entry residents in the catchment area. Also, the child must be having 5 years during the term at September to December term when the first year intakes are big in school. So those are the two main things that I looked at in terms of entry into the school. Of course, if there are more applications than places, and you follow the two items in the criteria I mentioned, then you'll have to look at age, and the older child will now be accepted in preference to a younger child who may.
Which is the level in which you let people in once they have signed the form. But the argument, sir, is that these forms are not available. My question is, from your best understanding, is it because the ministry is not providing sufficient forms? Is it because the forms are gobbled up all at one time? In other words, what I'm asking is it fair to or can you make the statement this morning, this has nothing to do with the teachers and the principals either holding places for their people or creating an artificial shortage of forms from the best information you have?
No, let me correct something I said. by filling out the application form, right? That does not guarantee you entry into the school.
Right.
What happens? Some schools may have 40 places for children that come into the first year class.
Mm-hmm.
But then, if you have 40 places, the question that arises: how many forms are you going to give out for 40? So some schools limit the forms. They will say they're going to give out 200 forms, and from the 200 applications, they will have to choose 40 students. So that's why schools have a limit on the number of application forms. That's why you find some people lining up to get the forms. But I'm first to say that is not acceptable. It must be given on normal school hours. If I may go further, I would say that schools should give out as many forms as is possible. It may mean a lot more work for the school in terms of going through the forms and trying to arrive at a final selection in terms of the available spaces. But in many cases, the forms that are given out to the available places, the ratio is quite high. Right? So you may give out 500 forms, but you may only have 40 or 60 places in a class. And in a first-year class, in the primary school system, the teacher-student ratio is 20 to 1, one teacher to 20 students. So if you are going to take in 2 first-year classes, that means you're going to take in 40 students. So there's 3 classes, 60 students, and so on. So the places are limited, and I can tell you for a fact that in the urban areas, the demand is very, very high for places, and there is not sufficient amount of places for the applications that are being made.
I am very clear, and I thank you. I am very clear that the fact that the admission process goes that you fill the form first, and after that, only when you fill the form, you were eligible. The question was whether, in fact, these forms are being withheld, but you addressed that, and for that, I thank you. I do need to ask you, because many have proffered that if an electronic registration was put in place that removed that process from the immediate teachers, and it's something that's monitored and governed and, in fact, operated by the ministry itself, an electronic registration, it would make that problem go away and keep your teachers beyond reproach. Is that a possibility, a possible solution?
Well, what happens now is the schools are responsible for the entire process in terms of distribution of forms, assessment of the forms, and the final selection. So the Ministry of Education per se does not have any input in that. Earlier you spoke about if the ministry was not making enough forms available. It is schools that design their own form and put the forms out there for the parents. So the ministry doesn't have any oversight. What has been happening lately is that the ministry has been asking of schools to see the list of students who were accepted to ensure that those who were accepted fell within the catchment area, and they are the older students from the application. So the ministry, based on complaints that they would have gotten from parents, they are now using some oversight in the whole selection process. Schools are being asked to send their final list of students that were selected to the ministry, for the school supervisors to have a look based on complaints by parents.
I got you.
Because of their child not being accepted into the school despite they maybe living in the catchment area.
It is the first time we're with you, and I thank you so much for making yourself available. I do need to ask you about something that I am happy about. I'm sure the nation is happy about, and you can give me the real 411 or the street version of it. Thankfully, we are not seeing videos of unacceptable behavior and fighting in schools like we saw a whole proliferation of it happening not too long ago. Has there been quantum improvements in these areas?
Well, I do not have any empirical data to say that definitively that there has been an improvement in the issue. What I can say is that if you speak to teachers in the secondary school system, they will point out to you a litany of woes as it relates to discipline and violence in schools. And it's true that you pointed out that there is in recent times, a scarcity of these videos on social media, and without any empirical data, I am hoping that this points to the fact that this is becoming less prevalent in our nation's schools.
Well, I'm hopeful that the lack of seeing them is an indicator of that. Teacher safety is something that I know concerns you as it concerns all of us. Are teachers saying now that they are feeling any more comfortable dealing with students because of the one or two areas we have had where the gang presence is alleged to be something that creates an environment of duress for teachers, in addition to dealing with some of their students and so on, their safety and the ability to call the police and have the response in a shorter space of time, and all police patrolling the school environment. Have these areas been improved to the point where teachers are now feeling safer?
No, I don't think we can make a definitive statement that the teachers are feeling safer. I don't think that really is the case. Teachers still have concerns about their safety on the school compound. I know the Ministry of Education, to be honest in terms of the own assessment, has been making attempts to put things in place in schools to ensure that student indiscipline is minimized. But teachers on the whole are still concerned about the behavior of students in our nation's schools. And just going back to one point in terms of the proliferation of videos on social media, I know for a fact that many schools have started to ban camera phones in schools. And I do not have the data, as I said earlier, but I do not know if this is now linked to less videos being shown on social media because of the fact that children and students are not allowed to have camera phones in some schools. Some schools have, in fact, instituted that rule in their schools.
And this is all at the discretion. I think that's a wonderful move. This is all at the discretion of the individual jurisdictions. Am I correct?
Yes. Individual school will come up with their own unique rules for that particular school.
Well, I have heard your plans for the Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. I am optimistic that a number of areas that you have identified will, in fact, come to fruition this year and on to the next, because the most important part of our society is dependent upon the people that you represent and your organization represent, which is who are our teachers. I thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this Sunday morning. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Mr. Bishop, and have a good Sunday. And feel free to call anytime. I'm sorry you weren't able to get me on prior occasions, but it is a bit demanding at times, keeping up with the media and with all the other work issues that I have to attend to. So I hope I can speak to you sometime shortly again.
And as I said, it is only because you make yourself accessible is why we've not been able to get you, but we truly appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning.
It's my pleasure, and I have your number saved now, so if I miss your call, I will get back to you when I can.
Very kind of you. I thank you so much, sir. Have a wonderful day now.
You.
It is 2 minutes away from the top of the hour. Let me take the opportunity to thank all my guests for being here this morning. Had a lot to do this morning. Started out with Errol Lewis, who is a CNN contributor and New York One reporter, dealing with the situation of folks returning to the United States, some with visas, some who are dual citizenship, unable to land. So that situation at JFK, we had the pleasure of talking to Errol Lewis about that. We also had Dr. Winford James. Thank you so much, Dr. James, for coming in this morning. Suzanne Gordon, Secretary of the Trinidad and Tobago Transparency International. Also, Victor Hart, who is the chairman, I believe, of Trinidad and Tobago Extractive Industries Transparency Institute. Thank you so much. Hazel Thompson, attorney, came in. We talked about the whole question of transformative process, the whole process of finding a different way for us to do the reconciliation between our people, which are those who are indeed harmed. All right, so I thank you very much for coming in, Attorney Thompson. Also, Attorney Rekha Ramjit, my joy this morning in having you, the ILP leader, and we close it down with the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Teachers Association, President Lynsley Doodhai. You have yourself a wonderful day. Join me tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. That's right. Join me tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. 6 o'clock is when you should be on the road. Join me tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock along with Michelle Borrell for what we call the morning show on 107.7. You have yourself a very wonderful day, and thank you for being with me on Brunch.